Hey there, hope all is well. I decided to post this video regarding the Nova Air C, and I'm sure there's many of you who are wondering why. After all, this device was released a little over a year ago now. And the reason is twofold. First off, there's been no update either released nor announced by books regarding this device. And in fact, there really is no competitor on the market in the 7.8, which is what this screen is, or 8-inch space that has color. This is really the premier device out there. There is a device that was just recently released, or is in the process of being released, by Bigme called the Galley, and that's using the new Gallery 3 technology. But there's some questions about that technology, and it's not clear how well that will be implemented and how well that performs against Kaleido, which we have featured here. But more importantly, regardless of how well it performs, is the cost. This device continues to retail for $400. And by the way, there's a black and white equivalent, which retails for, I think, $60 less, around $340 or so. The Galley is $700. So $300 is quite a leap. And so for that reason, this device really continues to be the e-reader to get if you're looking for a roughly 8-inch screen. So that's the first reason. This really still is the most up-to-date of these types of tablets in the market. And then, secondarily, I'm just seeing a lot of interest. A lot of people still curious about this device, and I thought it might be helpful to do a little bit of a video review. It won't be a full-scale review. I just want to go over some of my pros and cons about this device. If you go on the internet, there were a number of reviews done by tech sites on this, so you can certainly find those. But I was hoping that a video overview might be helpful for those that are considering making this purchase. Okay, so with that in mind, let's kind of go over some of the positives about this and why this is effectively my go-to e-note taker right now. We'll start off with the most obvious, which is displayed on the screen, which is that this device, like all books devices, or at least most of them as far as I know, runs Android, and in this case, Android 11. Why that's important is because I have the ability then to read Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Kobo, Libby, playbooks, whatever particular reading experience that you're interested in. I'm not locked into, for example, the Kindle ecosystem. If I like the Kobo Books app better, and actually I do, or if the book I want to read is not available, say on my Nook, but it's available on Google Play, you get the idea. This tablet allows you to read whatever you want on whatever app you want, as long as it's on Android. Pretty cool. I think that's one of the biggest advantages, and frankly, I'm surprised people buy dedicated e-readers from Amazon and Kobo when this type of experience is out there. But I am a little bit biased. So that's the first advantage. The other advantage that I love about this particular device, I love the large screen size, but it's still very comfortable to hold into one hand. So this weighs about 235 grams, and I can hold on to it without even bracing the bottom. I can just grab onto this side lightly. And let's click on Kobo Books as an example. I can start reading. Let me go into a book here. And just use my finger to quickly advance the page. You can see the pages move very fast. There's no ghosting in this particular mode. We'll see ghosting later with images. But you don't get ghosting when you're doing reading, generally. And just in case it's difficult to see, let me turn on front lighting. I'll turn on a combination of cold and warm light. Both options are available. I like that because it gives me kind of that white background. And as you can see, quickly zips through. I can go backwards as well. So pretty snappy. You can hold it on the right side, you can hold it on the left side. There is an advantage to holding it on the right side, which is, as you noted, I can just tap and it advances the page. When I hold it on the left side, I actually have to kind of swipe with my thumb. A little bit more difficult than the left, but just as comfortable on both sides. So that's, again, one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite e-reading devices. It does have note-taking capability. The stylus that it comes with is the same stylus that was released with the original Note Air. And I actually think this is one of the better styluses that Books has. It doesn't look like much, but it holds really well in the hand. Has a very solid grip. You heard the clang. So it's not going to come off unless you pull it off. And it feels comfortable to write with. If we go ahead and go into the writing app, or the Notes app rather, go here. Here's examples of the 4 different pens, and I've written in red, blue, and green, hello, just so you can see the difference. I've also done some highlight colors here. The front lighting really does make the colors pop more. You can still make out the colors without front lighting. I'll go ahead and turn that off accordingly, but it's a bit darker. Like all e-reading devices, it's absolutely fantastic in sunlight, but if you're indoors like we are now, sometimes the front lighting is needed. But it's a pretty good front lighting. Again, both warm and cold. And very evenly distributed. You don't see any variation at all. So it's a really well done front lighting. And the last thing I'll point in terms of the strengths of this device are images. So we'll go ahead and go into Google News. And that's a little grainy, so let's go ahead and go into the e-ink center. And we'll go to Regal, which I think is one of the better. Refresh. So not too bad. As we'll see later, Kaleido 3 does a better job with images. Well, that's a pretty good image right there. Although that's a little more black and white. So, images like this are not fantastic, but they're competently done, and the color does come out. I do think that the images look even better, or the color rather, looks even better with comic books, and that's actually an area that this does quite well, actually, and surprisingly well. I'm going to go into this comic. Let's go ahead and scroll all the way to the front. Refresh. I'm going to leave front lighting on because the colors pop more. But actually, let me turn it off real quick, just so you can get a sense of what that looks like. And let me refresh. Ghosting definitely is a consistent thing when looking at comics and the images. But pretty good color. And actually, in a little bit, I'm going to do this in comparison to Kaleido 3, and I think you're going to be surprised, as I was, that it holds up quite well, even compared to the next-gen technology. Let's just do a couple page advances here. So you're getting some ghosting. You can see that up there. So that is a thing to be aware of. A little swipe can fix that. You can actually set it where it just swipes up. I have it set where there is a, the Android navigation buttons. But there's multiple ways you can do it. Okay. So those are the strengths of this device. And before I close that out and move on to some of the weaknesses, I want to show a comparison. Let's move back to the beginning of this comic book. Excellent. Okay, and we're going to leave front lighting on. Move this back. And we're going to go ahead and show that in comparison to the Kaleido 3 technology. And let me scroll to the front. Excellent. We'll turn on the back lighting. Front lighting, rather. There we go. And all the front lighting is heavy on cold and with a little bit of warm to kind of get rid of the ghosting there. Now this surprised me, and what you're noticing is that the colors on the older Kaleido technology are bolder on this Books device than they are here on the latest version of Kaleido 3 on this Big Me Inknote device. I was very surprised at that. You see maybe a little bit more of the definition or the contrast rather in the blacks. It's very subtle though. I don't know if it's much of a tremendous difference, but the colors are popping on this device. More ghosting on this one than that one. That's interesting. There you go. That's not bad. Let me see if I can tap these at the same time. So they're both pretty much snappy in the same way. Here's another great example of a lot of color. I'm seeing more ghosting on this device than this one. That might be my settings, and I can play around with it, but for sure, the color is popping more on the older technology. Now, when I look at images, it's a different story. So let's go back into Google News. We'll do that here, like so. Let's see if we can find that image. Wondering if we can find the same image. Let me refresh this. And of course, they're out of sync, so I'm looking at different images. Grr. Let's see. Well, there's that first image. That was the same. This is actually a good example. I actually find the images, it's probably a little bit more difficult to tell here, but I find that the Kaleido 3 does better with the images. Well, here's a great example right here. So you'll notice that there's some gradient color. Oh, that even made it worse. That you can notice on the side, where here it blends much nicer together. So, there are pluses to the new technology over the older technology, but you're not normally looking at images on these. Comic books is more common, and this device did a better job at that. So, just wanted to show a quick example of those two in action. And now let's talk about a little bit of maybe the cons of this device. We'll go ahead and go back to the home screen. Let's start off, there are limitations to color, and we just saw some pretty surprising results comparing, comic books in particular versus the new Kaleido 3 technology. But this color does not pop like an LCD screen, and anyone with that expectation needs to lose that immediately. If I had an LCD screen handy and I could put, the Kobo books next to that image, it would be night and day, and probably the best way to see that actually is if we go into the covers of books. Look how dark, and this is green right here, and you can barely see it. And these are dark covers, but they're not that dark. And so, there is this tendency for some muting of the color, some of the darkness to take precedent. It's not a vibrant experience of an LED screen or an OLED screen. And so, if you're okay with that, then the color is serviceable and it looks good for what it is, but it's certainly not going to be vibrant or really pop your eye. Uh, not pop your eye. Yes, you know what I mean. The other negative I have is the cover, and God bless books, but they cannot do a cover right. Here is the cover to the device. It has, kind of this green look, which I don't know. I don't particularly care for it, but that's just an aesthetic choice. It does have this spine and these buttons. I had a hard time getting these buttons to work. In theory, they should be mappable. And if we go into settings, and there's the smart cover settings. Um, let's see, somewhere here. Yeah, there we go. So you can, by app, in theory, you can determine what the buttons do, either changing your volume or doing page turns. And then you also have the option of scrolling. I, however, have had difficulty getting that to work, but in theory, that is available to you. But what I really don't like about the case, other than the aesthetics, it does snap in nicely, so I do appreciate that. Okay, but when you're folding the case over, I hate that. I hate how this is like flapping over, and it's not fun to hold. You gotta squeeze it shut, and you gotta put some tension on the device to hold it when it's in the case mode. I don't have to do that when I'm just holding it with one hand. It's actually harder to hold with the case on. So I'm not a fan of the case, and I'm certainly not a fan of the buttons, as I had difficulty actually getting them to work, particularly with Kobo. So I just rather use my thumb to swipe. And I do think that's a negative of this device, that it doesn't have a decent case, although that is the theme with books. So there are just my overview thoughts about this device. This is my go-to reader. I think it's an absolutely fantastic reader. I absolutely love reading on this. I can comfortably hold it with one hand. I have access to all the bookstores I could possibly want. It is a little expensive as an e-reader at that $400, but giving all the different apps that are available to me in that experience, given that the color, maybe it's not as vibrant, but it still adds something. Even just this little blue that they have for the icon, it just adds a little bit to the experience, which I appreciate. And comics actually look, as we saw, quite good on this as well. So I actually think that for those that are thinking about purchasing this device, I actually would give it a strong recommend. And I'm really not sure that there's anything on the near horizon, even this year, that would make you regret this purchase. Yeah, it's possible that maybe toward the fall, Books will announce a new 7.8 or 8-inch screen, and it'll have Gallery 3. But as we saw in the example with the Big Me device, sometimes Gallery 3 will be better and sometimes it won't. So I really don't think that if you're buying this device, you're going to be regretting it, say, a few months down the road. And really, it's going to take a few generations of technology in terms of improving the color until you really see a massive, notable difference both in color and performance. So, for that reason, I think that the Nova Air 3, C rather, Nova Air C is still a really good purchase, and it's certainly a device that I use quite often. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful if you were considering purchasing the device. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask in the comments and I will try to help you out. I hope you have a great day.